Well, we are joined on the line by Jim Caviziel and Tim Ballard. Guys, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
So, Tim, why don't you tell us about the film Sound of Freedom and how this relates to your background, your work history? How did this whole story get started?
So, as you said, Ben, I was working in the government, and I was working a couple of cases, as I had been for over a decade, one in Haiti, one in Colombia. And the U.S. government told me to come home. They said there's not enough resources, there's not enough jurisdiction. But I had already kind of made myself the bait. I'd already committed to the operation that would rescue kids, and I had a choice: either come home and not rescue kids, or quit my job and stay in Colombia and finish it. And so we did. We quit. My wife and I made this crazy decision, and we quit and started to try to privatize the rescue of children. And it turned out to be one of the biggest rescue operations we've ever been a part of. Over 120 kids rescued in that op, and that's the basis for the film.
So, Tim, I mean, you start off that story and you say that you were working with the government, you decided to leave the government. Why did the U.S. government decide that this was just not a priority? It's
a tough question, and one we still have to grapple with. I mean, why are there 5-to-1 anti-drug agents in the U.S. government to agents who are fighting child crimes? It's not been a priority. There were other factors like jurisdictional limitations and budget restraints. I understand that, but really, it's not the priority it needs to be, which is why we're telling the story and waking up the nation so that it becomes a priority. So we understand we are fighting. Human trafficking is a $32 billion a year business, and it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise on the planet, but we're not giving it the attention it needs.
So, Jim, when you first read the script, how did you feel first reading the script? What made you want to sign on to this project?
Well, first of all, I had to get the part because Eduardo Verástegui and Alejandro Monteverdi, Eduardo's the producer and Alejandro's the director. Both of them came to me and were talking to me about it and wanted to see if I really wanted to be a part of it. You know, I have 3 adopted children from China, and I know the dangers of how hard it is for children in the world, and gone through that with the adoption. I wanted to be a part of it. I heard about Tim, and when I knew what he's the kind of guy that any guy would want to play, and I'm more like, instead of playing a Marvel comic character, I want to play a real hero, and Tim was that. And so we went, read the script, and the thing just jumped off the page. It was a phenomenal screenplay, and you're very, very lucky. And I had one other opportunity when I obviously worked with Mel Gibson in the Passion of the Christ, but rarely do you get a screenplay like that. And that's why this film is just hopping off the page.
So, Tim, why do you think that this film is so important right now? Obviously, we're seeing a lot of stories in the news about child sex exploitation. There's a new story about how Instagram was essentially fostering algorithms that promote child sex exploitation to people. Why do you think this film is so crucial right at this moment?
Well, it certainly is timely. When they started this project 8 years ago, they were worried, the producers, because no one was really talking about this. Who's going to want to come to see something they don't know about? 8 years later, here we are right in the middle of it. In fact, like to your point about Instagram, how traffickers, pedophiles are utilizing these platforms, and big tech isn't doing what they should do in terms of intervening. Also, the southern border. I spent 10 years of my agent days with the government on that southern border. I know everything about it. I know how the border enforcement leads to rescuing kids. I know that this current administration is facilitating the trafficking of children. I mean, and the movie Sound of Freedom, actually the case kicks off with a real story at the port of entry where we rescued a little boy who was being trafficked across the border.
So, Tim, obviously you were going undercover while you were trying to uncover this sort of stuff and destroy these child sex trafficking rings. How did you deal with that on a personal level? How do you keep a straight face while you're working with some of the most disgusting people on the planet? How do you actually go about doing that on a day-to-day level?
It is really it's tough. You know, I've been doing it for 18 years now, so I've learned how to not, you want to strangle these guys, but you got to pretend to be their friend. Sometimes these cases can last months where you are. In fact, Jim plays me in a true story you'll see in the film where I actually had to go undercover as myself. It was bizarre. It was a true story where I had to convince the guy that I was a child crimes agent, but got addicted to child exploitation material. And that's how I got him. But oh my gosh, I mean, it broke me up. Like, it was like 2 months I had to play this role, and it breaks your heart. But I just tell myself, look, if I screw up, if I do something out of my own passion, and hurt this guy, it'll hurt the kids, right? The kids could be affected, and that's the thing. Just keep the eye on the goal, which is getting these kids out.
Well, again, the movie is Sound of Freedom. It is available in theaters nationwide July 4th. As Jim is saying, if you want to have a screening at your church, if you'd like to see your community take a look at it, then you should definitely contact them and contact your church and let them know that you'd like to see the film there. Jim Caviziel, Tim Ballard, really appreciate the time. Good luck with the film.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.